What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. Today we are going to be discussing buy low candidates for running backs. You can go out, win your league, pick up these players. But before we get into it, if you guys could, go down, leave a like, leave a comment. I am answering every single comment, whether it be trade-related, start sits, anything. More than happy to help you all out. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another fantasy football video, and you can crush your league mates that way. With that out of the way, let's hop right into it with our first buy low candidate in Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon right now is my number one buy low candidate because despite getting 71 touches, despite having the ball in his hands constantly throughout the game, he has yet to receive a touchdown. Last year, he put up 16 touchdowns in 16 games. So this is a player that can get in the end zone frequently, and he's in an offense that likes to run the ball an absolute ton. So far this year, the Bengals are 8th in total run plays ran, and that is despite Joe Burrow not being a rushing quarterback. Also, going into the season, the Bengals were ranked with the 8th best O-line according to PFF, and yes, I know their O-line has looked awful. Yes, it has. But this is the absolute worst case scenario for the O-line that they have right now. Well, yes, it has looked really bad. They have made tons of free agency acquisitions, including Lyle Collins and Alex Kappa. It is a little bit scary seeing how bad they have looked. But at the same time, it's not going to be worse than last year's unit. And last year's unit was the same unit that got Joe Mixon to 16 touchdowns, led Joe Burrow to have 34 touchdowns. I think this offense will be just fine. It is looking a little scary as of now. But they did just dog on the Jets. I think it's absolute. I think their offense is going to be absolutely fine in the long term, and Joe Mixon will be the beneficiary of that. He has gotten unlucky, but at the same time, he's going to be used in the end zone every chance they can get. It has been a little unfortunate that he has not gotten into the end zone, but 71 touches and higher utilization in the receiving game, which has always been a knock on Joe Mixon, is always exciting to see. Right now, he is on pace for 113 targets in the season. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. If we could realistically get 60 or 70 targets, that raises Joe Mixon's floor and ceiling a ton, considering last year he only had 48 targets. So if we can get an extra 20 or so targets, that's an extra fantasy point or two a game. Not to mention the fact that he should have more receiving touchdowns if he is getting utilized in the receiving game more. So I think Joe Mixon will be absolutely fine this season, and yet he feels pretty gross just because of the fantasy performances he's put up. So far, 18, 9, and 5 points are not the performances you would expect for somebody going in the first round of fantasy football drafts, albeit the end of the first round. But still, I mean, Joe Mixon should be absolutely fine. He's going to bounce back. We see he gets the workload, and what we're chasing here is volume. He's looked inefficient. That will not continue. I promise you that. But anyways, let's move on to our second running back here, the thumbnail, J.K. Dobbins. I like J.K. Dobbins a lot as a buy low candidate for a few reasons. For one, he's only 23 years old, going into the third season of his NFL career, meaning that he's still young, and recovering from an ACL will be a lot easier for him than someone like Frank Gore or anyone like that in general. He's also on one of the most run-heavy offenses in the entire NFL with the solid O-line. I mean, you got Ronnie Stanley there. This O-line is pretty good, at least average in the NFL. And if you have that, you'll take that, especially when you have Lamar Jackson also running the ball, which opens up tons of lanes for the running back, as we saw in J.K. Dobbins' rookie season when he averaged 6 yards a carry. Also, speaking of 2020, we saw J.K. Dobbins ascend and take this running back one role straight out from underneath Gus Edwards, averaging 15 touches a game and a touchdown a game at the end of 2020. And going into the 2021 season, he was averaging 91% of first-team reps in preseason, meaning that they were planning on utilizing him as the RB1. Now we are going to see them slowly get J.K. Dobbins integrated. At the same time, once he is fully integrated back into this offense, he's going to hopefully look like the running back of old. Well, yes, it is a risk that he might not. If you are getting the running back of old in J.K. Dobbins and in this elite Ravens offense, I am absolutely fine taking a risk on a guy who can straight up put up Nick Chubb level games in the offense that he's in. But that is it for J.K. Dobbins. Now let's move on to our next running back, another guy who's only averaging about 15 or so touches a game, and that is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is another buy low candidate for me this year, and it's not even like he's had a bad season, really. I mean, 21 points, 8 points, and 7 points. That's not terrible. It's not great, but it's fine for a backup. But Kareem Hunt is more than a backup. First of all, 15 touches a game is not backup territory. He's literally had 15 touches every single game. So I think it's fair to say Kareem Hunt will average around between 13 and 17 touches unless Nick Chubb goes down, which I will get to later. He's also heavily utilized at the goal line, getting a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown his first game, and getting multiple rushing attempts within the 5-yard line against the Steelers. While he didn't convert, which hurt his stats, overall, we see Kareem Hunt get utilized at the goal line a ton, and we know he's going to be having the touchdowns as he did before he got injured last season. Because last season, before his injury, he had 5 touchdowns in 6 games and then was out for pretty much the season. So it did hurt his overall fantasy stock a little bit, and that's why he was somebody that was going pretty low. But this is a player who will consistently have 15 touches, and if Nick Chubb does go down, let's say for any extended period of time, Kareem Hunt does have the ceiling to win you leagues. Let's say Nick Chubb goes down, he misses 5 games towards the end of the season. You now have a certified RB1, a guy who was finished as the RB3 in fantasy football before, and finished as the RB8 despite being suspended for 5 games. Just chilling there. You could have him at flex. So I think Kareem Hunt is an absolute steal where he's going. I have him in literally every single one of my leagues. So yes, he is a buy low candidate for me, but I own him in all of my leagues. People have been trying to trade for him at a buy low price. I am not personally doing it because I know the value that Kareem Hunt is, and I would go out and try and get him. Also, they have the second best O-line in the entire league, and Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, well, he did ball against the Steelers. This is not somebody that would be considered a good quarterback. I don't think anybody was really excited about Jacoby Brissett going into the season, unless you're a Jacoby Brissett fan for whatever reason. But I don't think too many people were excited about Jacoby Brissett. And this Browns O-line is debatably the best in the league. PFF has them at 2. You could easily have them at 1. They have a stellar O-line unit here. So I think that combination pretty much gives away the fact that they're going to be running the ball an absolute ton. They don't have a good quarterback, and they have a great running back duo and a great O-line. And once Deshaun Watson comes back, well, yes, I think the volume might go down for Kareem Hunt slightly. I think the efficiency is going to go up. So instead of averaging 15 touches a game, he might average more like 12 or 11, but I think the end zone opportunities are going to be a lot more plentiful. And I think he'll be utilized just as heavy, if not heavier, in the receiving game. Because we saw what Deshaun Watson has done in the past, supporting a guy like David Johnson. I think Kareem Hunt will be absolutely fine. But anyways, moving on to our next 2 guys. I'll kind of group them together because they kind of are in similar situations, finishing as the running back 5 and the running back 6. Last year, we got Leonard Fournette and we got James Conner. I'll start with Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette is a guy who's had 3 seasons within the top 10 as a top 10 running back, finishing last year as the RB6. He was drafted top 5 in the NFL draft, so we know he's got the profile to be a very, very talented running back. He's also got a great workload, getting about 20 touches a game, which is something that very, very few running backs in the NFL generally ever touch, having 23, 26, and 18 touches over the last 3 games. Yes, he hasn't been that great for fantasy, but the reason is he hasn't really scored a touchdown. That's why he's a buy low candidate here, because he hasn't scored a touchdown yet, and people a lot of times are looking at overall fantasy production, overall fantasy stats, and 14, 8, and 9 are not stats you're going to be very happy about from a guy you drafted as a high-end RB2. So people are maybe looking to shop him, because for one, this O-line has looked a lot worse with tons and tons of injuries, but PFF still had them ranked as a top 5 O-line coming into the season. And well, yes, they do have a lot of injuries. They still have the building blocks to have absolutely great O-line play in Tristan Wirfs, in Donovan Smith, both top 15 tackles in the NFL. And Leonard Fournette is consistently used in the receiving game. Last season, 84 targets, 69 receptions. That is elite level production at the running back position. That is elite level receiving work at the running back position. Very, very few running backs ever hit 80 targets. The only ones that come to mind really are Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris. These are the type of, and DeAndre Swift. These are the type of players that hit 80 plus targets, and Leonard Fournette is a rare breed that can get that. Also, he's playing with Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time. It's not even a debate. I don't think there's a single person that can even argue anyone else besides Tom Brady. He's the greatest football player of all time. Yes, he is 45, But this Bucs team is also dealing with a multitude of injuries. They're missing, or not anymore, I guess, because the suspension is over. But Mike Evans was suspended. We had Chris Godwin out with a hamstring. Julio Jones being constantly injured. Perryman is the wide receiver 1 for a couple games. Russell Gage constantly out. I mean, this team is dealing with a multitude of injuries, and they're going to need to rely on Leonard Fournette, as they have. They've been giving him 90% of snaps each game. That's why I do like Leonard Fournette a lot. Now let's move on to James Conner, a guy in a very similar situation. James Conner is a guy I would be a little bit more hesitant to trade for than Leonard Fournette, because I think you'd be paying a similar price, but I would rather have Leonard Fournette than James Conner. But anyways, they're in very similar positions, both averaging 9 fantasy points a game and not really getting into the end zone. Well, Leonard Fournette had 0 touchdowns, James Conner has had 1, which salvaged his week 1 fantasy performance, but week 2, week 3, 6.7 points. You're not happy with that as a high-end running back 2 for a manager. But looking at the stats that he's had outside of this year for his career, I mean, he's been pretty good. First of all, last year finishing as the RB5 on 18 touchdowns, and then also finishing as the RB7 in 2018 despite only playing 13 games, having 13 touchdowns. This guy's a nose for the end zone. Well, he only has 1 touchdown so far this season. I think that has to change, especially once DeAndre Hopkins comes back, because right now the offense looks pretty anemic with just Marquise Brown. They're literally giving Greg Dortch 10 targets a game, and well, Greg Dortch has actually looked surprisingly decent out there. I mean, he's no Rondale Moore. He is no DeAndre Hopkins. I think once you get those type of players back, the floor is going to be a lot better spaced, and James Conner won't be getting 2.6 yards a carry, 3.5 yards a carry, and 3 yards a carry a game. I just think it's impossible for him to average that little. I just think it's impossible for him to average that little when you do have DeAndre Hopkins in, when you do have Marquise Brown spacing the ball as a deep threat. And also, James Conner is somebody that historically has been utilized as a receiving back. This year, averaging 5 targets a game, which is absolutely fine at the running back position. I mean, that's honestly more than fine. That's probably above average. Well, yes, he hasn't really been able to convert into any serious yards per carry totals or anything like that. I think this will change for James Conner as the offense starts clicking with DeAndre Hopkins, with Julio Brown. And well, yes, I do think Cliff Kingsbury is a pretty bad coach. I think Kyler Murray is a phenomenal quarterback who is severely underrated. And while, yes, he does shut down the second half of the season sometimes, I think this year is going to be the opposite with DeAndre Hopkins coming back. DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best players in the entire NFL at a point. Now, yes, he might be a little bit worse, but he will be able to spread the floor. And we also saw last year that James Conner without Chase Edmonds was one of the best running backs in the entire league. Last year, without Chase Edmonds from weeks 9 to 14, he was the running back 2, despite only playing 5 games. Austin Eckler played an extra game during that span, and he still outscored Austin Eckler. He was only behind Jonathan Taylor in fantasy points scored in that time. We all know how good Jonathan Taylor was last season. So I would go out, trade for James Conner. I think he is definitely a buy low candidate. But anyways, guys, that is it from me for my buy low running backs for week 4 and on. I think all these players are steals where you can potentially trade for them. But anyways, that is it from me. As always, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment. I am answering every single fantasy football related comment, so please give a comment if you do have questions about fantasy football. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on. But that's it from me. As always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.